Hello everyone, my name is Gus.
Hi, I'm Woody.
Today we have a reaction to a video that I've been kind of, putting off. Because it's been requested a bunch of times. But it talks about gruesome deaths. Which I'm not a big fan of discussing. Because these people were divers. And I feel connected to them. And they had horrible deaths. But I think that there's always the opportunity when it comes to diver deaths to learn something from them. So I think this would be a good case for that. Okay. You haven't seen this video, but it talks about saturation diving and a big incident that happened, some time ago.
So I'll let it play, and then we'll discuss what saturation diving is. I always want to describe the words, because we can't just assume everybody even knows what that means. So let it roll.
The video will really explain this very well.
Good.
And by the way, there's several videos about this out there. This one I found that is the most accurate and describes it very well. He did a really good job talking about this, so that's why I chose this one. And the link is in the description. Every time we react to a video, we put the link on the description. But he has a slight accent, so it might be harder to understand for some people. But he does a really good job.
What I'm hearing, when I talk to you, I only get every other word.
Good point. And he does a really good job explaining this.
Okay.
And
let's roll it.
Let's give it a shot.
Diving through the vast ocean that is the internet, I have discovered a story so gruesome that gives me chills. The Byford Dolphin accident is one of the most terrible accidents in recent history. The 4 divers who were inside the decompression chamber that day could not even realize what had happened, as they did die in a fraction of a second. This is the most brutal, painless death in history. We are in Norway in the early 1960s. At that time, its economy was very poor. It was based mainly on fishing, the export of wood and hydroelectric power. But everything began to change in 1963, when the Norwegian government claimed the sovereign rights of the North Sea against England. Thinking that the North Sea was more of a burden than a strategic advantage, and in accordance with various treaties signed after the Second World War, the English ceded that sea to the Norwegian government. A few years later, in 1969, a ship called Ocean Viking found oil within the Norwegian control area. But they did not find some oil. Instead, they ran into one of the largest oil pockets in the world. Before long, the Norwegians were extracting 1,600,000 barrels of crude a day. Thanks to that, their economy grew to the levels we see today. One of the most important natural gas pockets of Norway was in a field called Frigg. To extract this gas, the government hired British Petroleum. This multinational in turn contracted a company called Dolphin Drilling. Dolphin Drilling engineers were faced with a daunting challenge, since from the surface to the seafloor there's a depth of 100 meters, and the gas pocket is located about 1,850 meters below the water level. So they devised a plan according to which they would use a semi-submergible, stabilized column drilling rig. They called it Byford Dolphin. This work of engineering had a length of 108 meters long, 67 meters wide, and a depth of 36 meters. It was capable of drilling to a depth of 6,100 meters and could operate in a water depth of 460 meters. It was equipped with advanced drilling equipment and could maneuver with its own engines. An amazing machine. You can already imagine that to operate this monster, you need a lot of personnel. And it's true, 102 people work on the platform. Each of the team members had a very specific role, but among the mechanics and engineers, we also could find 6 divers. This small team of divers was dedicated to the maintenance and repair of the submerged part of the platform, as well as the drills and extractors when they were in operation. But this job is much more complex than anyone can imagine. Apart from being excellent welders and mechanics, these divers worked in a very particular condition due to the depth at which they operate.
By the way, underwater welding is one of the most deadly professions in the world. You're deep underwater, you're definitely saturating your tissues, and you're welding with fire where there's oxygen around. And they're very well paid.
Since a diver who usually works 100 meters deep has a little problem. The problem is this: when you go 100 meters below the water level, you cannot breathe from normal air tanks. The pressure you are subjected to makes normal air unfeasible and unbreathable. So in order to carry out this type of operation, you have to breathe a mixture of gases called trimix.
Trimix. We've corrected this in the past. Obviously, he's not a diver. He's just telling the story, but we'll give him a pass. He's doing a good job.
I know it's with an accent, but
Trimix.
But let's
Trimix. Yeah.
but let's explain it. Trimix, helium,
He'll talk about
a
it.
very small percent of oxygen, and then the rest is all your inert gas, which is mostly nitrogen.
Yeah.
Is made up of oxygen, helium, and nitrogen. The fact that you are inhaling nitrogen is a problem for your body if you start ascending quickly. This is one of the most important things for divers around the world. When you breathe Trimix, the nitrogen it contains is diluted into your blood. As you rise to the surface, this nitrogen expands and generates small bubbles inside your body. This phenomenon is called rapid decompression syndrome, and it can lead to many problems. Poor decompression can lead to joint pain, paralysis, and many other diseases that can be fatal and cause your death. So every time a diver goes down to repair something, it can take up to 24 hours between stops to decompress, which, as you can imagine, is unfeasible if you work day after day at that depth. With this procedure, you would spend more time waiting in the water than working. Luckily, the US Navy discovered a way to avoid having to decompress every time a diver surfaces. The technique they developed is called saturation diving. In the 60s, they discovered that the nitrogen that accumulates in the blood has a cap. When you're fully saturated, you do not die. Your body simply does not accept more nitrogen, in which you can be as long as you want at high pressures. It is not pleasant, since your body is at constant state of cold, but it is possible. Finding out that a diver can be under high pressure for as long as he wants, they just had to solve a small problem. How do we do it so that our saturated divers can eat, sleep, and cover the rest of their biological needs? So the US Navy also decided to solve that problem.
Man, I feel, thankful and also kind of bad about all those US Navy divers that do all these experiments.
Well, they did. Many of them back then, and that's how they built our tables. Like you see the US Navy dive tables,
Right.
which we basically cut those in half. You know how if you study diving, so we basically do whatever they figured out they could do in terms of the right deco time, we halved it.
Yeah,
which
because
made it much more conservative.
Well, because those tables were built with like 20-year-old studs in the Navy, which I'm not a 20-year-old stud. Shocker.
I didn't know.
I know.
I thought you
people
were.
right now, they drop whatever they
I
had.
did not know that. Wow.
But
man, that's weird.
anyway, those U.S. Navy divers, it was a tough job. Like that's how we find out that oxygen is poisonous.
Everything
below 6 meters or 20 feet. Like, give it to a Navy diver. Oh, look, he's having a seizure.
I called it caisson sickness. Remember when they were building the New York City subways and going down in the caisson pipes? What's going on? Why are we all dying? They didn't understand this.
This is crazy.
Let's keep going, though. This is wild. I'm not saying much because this is fascinating.
One thing I wanted to add, because we both understand about nitrogen and pressure and all of that, but just a quick explanation. So basically, for those of you watching this who haven't watched Dive Talk in the past, who maybe have no idea about pressure and the effect it has on gas, basically there's something called Boyle's Law, if you want to do some research about this, that says that the deeper you go underwater, the more the gases will compress underwater. So for example, if you go down 10 meters or 33 feet, the size of the compressed gas will half. So it will go down in half. And the deeper you go, it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you're diving at 100 meters, the gas is compressed 9 times to the size that it used to be, or 10 times, or 11, or 20, or whatever, depending on how deep the divers are. So you're breathing that in. If you go out super fast, all those gas molecules in your blood will literally expand 10 times, 20 times, whatever it is, whatever deep you are. So that's why we go little by little, and that's why when we dive, even though we're only going down for a few minutes, depending on the depth, we stay within the no decompression limit, which is what tables, based on tables that Woody was talking about. We do it slowly. That way, before the gas expand too much, you're kind of breathing them out. So as you're going up, you're breathing out all these gas molecules. So when you get to the surface, the gases didn't expand.
Yeah, I really only just have one question to everything that you just said. Who was your primary dive instructor? Because that was impressive. I mean, whoever taught you all that.
Doug did such a good job with that.
Let me see.
Shout out to Doug Ebersol.
Can I enroll in all of your classes, Woody?
You're awesome.
Sure, Gus. Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to work with you and devote all that time to you. Thank you.
And Woody. Woody was also my instructor. But anyway, so that's what we're talking about here. Imagine if you do that, like we do it, we go down for 10 minutes and we go slowly trying to prevent those gases from expanding too fast and, you know, and causing decompression sickness. Imagine if you spend 3 weeks underwater at depth, injecting your body with tiny bubbles, which are, you know, bubbles of gas compressed to that depth, and then you try to go up.
We broke the body down into 16 theoretical tissue compartments.
Yes.
Forget about are there 16. It's theoretical because imagine each tissue has different level of density, so it absorbs gas at different rates and it off gases at different rates.
Right.
When they say fully saturated, all 16 of those theoretical tissue compartments cannot take any more nitrogen. It's like filling up a sponge with water.
Yep.
And it can't get more water in it. It's
That's right.
fully saturated. So that's kind of what this whole discussion is about in the video.
Fun fact before we go forward, people ask us, how bad does the pressure feel the deeper you go? Boyle's law only applies to gases, meaning gases feel the effects of pressure, but everything else does not. Like on our bodies, it feels the same if I'm at 10 feet or 110 or 210.
Yeah.
I don't feel anything
Yes.
except for gas cavities, like sinuses and
yes.
whatnot.
Now, a mask,
In
it
your
has
ears.
trapped gas inside of it, right? So
Yep.
when we say you feel nothing, well, if you were to keep that mask on and never go
Never
clear it
blow
out,
air.
you're gonna have a barotrauma injury. It's gonna push and push and push.
We
and
have a
get
fun
your
video
face
about
out.
this. I'm
We
gonna
have a
link
video.
it.
We have
I'm
a
gonna
video.
link it
Okay,
above.
good.
Yeah.
All right, now let's keep going. Great.
Build a series of pressurized containers. Inside these containers, the pressure can be adjusted to the pressure at which the divers work in the water. Divers live and eat in these capsules without having to depressurize and can live there for periods of 6, 8 and more months. That is why this job is one of the highest paid in the world, with a diver earning $1,400 a day. But if these pressurized capsules are on the Byford Dolphin, how do they go up and down to the depth of the seabed? For that, they use smaller capsules called bells. These bells are attached to the chambers where the divers live. First pressurized, divers open the hatches and enter the container. They close the door and lower the hood at the exact pressure to the exact depth to avoid decompensation.
So you cannot have, I don't know what's coming in this video, but at this level of pressure, if you have a major leak, for example, in that bell of the pressure, imagine the immediate expansion inside of their body.
It's an explosion.
Embolisms will explode up into your brain cavity, and you would die instantly.
Yeah.
Instantly. So I'm just saying, this is the reason they're paid so much. It's extremely high risk.
Yep.
In 1983, the group of divers operating in the Byford Dolphin consisted of 6 people. 4 of them were saturation divers: Edwin Arthur Coward, Roy Lucas, Bjorn Bergensen, and Truls Hellevik. And these in turn were assisted by William Cramon and Martin Saunders, who were also expert drivers. The accident took place on November 5. It is not yet known exactly what happened, but the consequences were terrible for the entire team. Bergersen and Hellevik were coming back from doing a maintenance on the seabed, and when they finished, they went up with a pressurized bell to the surface. Cramon and Saunders attached the bell to the decompression chamber and compensated the pressure of the intermediate access, thus allowing the 2 divers to go to the first room. In the second room, Coward and Lucas were resting. The problem came when, following the established security steps, something went wrong.
So just so everybody's following, their living quarters are up in the ship or on this platform, right? That's where they stay. That's where they sleep and eat and take showers and everything. That is pressurized to the same pressure they have a depth where they're working, which is 100 meters. In order for them to get from this platform to down there to work, they go into this bell. The bell connects to their living quarters, and in order for them to avoid having an issue, the connection, meaning that pipe that connects the living quarters with the bell, needs to also be pressurized to the same pressure of the bell and the living quarters. That way they can go in and transfer from one to the other. Fun fact too, even their safety raft, like their emergency raft, if the whole platform catches on fire, is also pressurized. So they can go into a raft and be safe and depressurize over days. So that's what he's explaining. These 2 divers came up on the bell. They're attaching to it. They're doing the pressure thing so they can go into the living quarters. There's people inside, sleeping, resting, whatever. These guys are on the bell, And here's what happens next.
The steps were as follows. 1. Close the hood airlock. 2. Gradually increase the pressure on the hood to seal the door. 3. Close the door of the first chamber that is open for access. 4. Gradually depressurize the access to 1 atmosphere. 5. Open the airlock to separate the hood from the pressurized chamber. But something happened when they got to step 3. The most plausible theory is that due to extreme exhaustion of the divers and a communication failure due to environmental noise, Hellevik failed to close the access lock between the bell and the chamber. Cramon and Saunders thought it was already closed and unhooked the hood, causing the terrible accident. The difference between the pressures inside and the pressures outside was staggering, which triggered an explosive decompression. Inside the chamber, they were at 9 atmospheres of pressure, and outside they were at 1 atmosphere. In addition, all the divers inside had their blood saturated with nitrogen. It all happened in a split second. The bell went off with such force that it killed Cramon instantly and left Saunders seriously injured. But the worst was for the 4 divers inside. The 3 divers who were away from the lock died instantly due to the expansion of nitrogen in their body. Their blood boiled on its own in an instant. Forensics found the remains of the divers after the arteries burst and the blood running through them turned to fat. These fat balls were found throughout their arteries, veins, liver and heart, but they also discovered that it had been expelled with such violence out of the veins that it was scattered throughout the chamber, along with what had recently been the bodies of the divers, now transformed into an unrecognizable mass. In a split second, they were dead, but the worst death was Hellevik's. Finding himself close to the door to close it, the air that came out with overwhelming force caused his body to be sucked into the airlock. His body was ejected through the 2-foot-long crescent moon-shaped opening. With the difference in pressure to which he was subjected, the force applied to the diver's body was approximately 25 tons from the air trying to get out, what ended with the expulsion of all the organs of his thoracic cavity projected to the outside. Inside the chamber, they found his windpipe, section of his small intestine, and his spinal column. Even hours later, they discovered a section of his intestine hanging 10 meters above the lock. The forensics described the state of some organs. They were intact, they said, as if they had been dissected cleanly and expelled out of the body. The accident was so brutal that investigators found little blood at the crash site. The only consolation, if we can put it this way, is that the divers who died there, according to forensics, died an instant and painless death.
Oh man, I want to jump away from just how awful that was, because it's pretty difficult to hear that too. That was an incredibly well done explanation of decompression, saturation diving, air bells, and the chamber where they basically live until they ultimately come to the surface. That was one of the best I've ever heard. It's so easy to understand.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to understand the accident as well. Sometimes that's hard to understand. Like, I don't exactly know what happened. This is a simple concept. One is at an extreme pressure, and it immediately was exposed to a 9-fold less pressure. So immediately it's as if they were rocketed from 9 atmospheres to 1 atmosphere. Instantaneous, not even rocketed, just instantaneous.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't get to the surface as quickly as that happened. So, of course, everything, it just, it expanded 9-fold instantly. So I mean, you're just immediately dead. What I didn't understand exactly, maybe you did, is somehow he got shot into that chamber at the pressure of 25 tons. I'm not sure I understand that. It just sucked him through because of the pressure change.
So basically, he was the guy in charge of opening the door, right? So imagine there's a pipe that connects the bell and the living quarters, right? There's a tunnel.
Yes.
So the process is the dive bell arrives and hooks.
Okay, so he's in the living quarters at 9 atmospheres. Let's be really specific.
Yes.
Okay. Bell comes in.
Hooks up to it.
Hooks up.
Then they're supposed to equalize the pressure on that transport pipe that connects the bell and the living quarters.
Because the bell and the living quarters are both at 9 atmospheres.
Correct.
It's just the transfer tunnel that wasn't.
Correct.
Okay, so they connect. Now it's time just to make the access point.
Correct. It's time to pressurize that tunnel so they can open both doors and transfer through.
Okay.
Right? So what happens is there's a problem with communication. Something went on that prevented that from happening. So the transfer tube was either the bell was not connected or the transfer tube was not pressurized, whatever happened, but the guy basically opened the door of the living quarters thinking that everything is connected and pressurized. So when he did that, obviously all the pressure inside the bell tries to escape to the 1 atmosphere, and he got sucked out. Like, imagine if a piece of the plane rips out, you're at 8,000 feet, and now outside is whatever, 30,000. It's just
great
sucking you out of it.
That's what would happen. If you open that into a non-pressurized, it's gonna just fire you right out because all that pressure is trying to escape.
That's right.
At 25 tons worth of volume, you're basically being shot out like a bullet.
So there's a 2-foot gap, so 60 centimeters basically. I assume his torso stuck to it, but all that force
Sucks
trying to
everything out of
escape
his body.
just blew through
That's
it.
That's pretty brutal.
I will say though that there are several versions of this video out there. Some of those videos have pictures of the autopsy, or at least they're claiming that. I don't know if they're real or not. They're very, very gruesome. I made the choice not to include them.
I'm glad we don't need to.
I know that including those
channel.
pictures would have gotten us more clicks or views or whatever. I'm okay with not getting.
Remember, we have a lot of kids that I'm okay with the kids watching what we just showed.
Yeah,
because they're going to learn from this. But we're not here to be extremists and just create gruesomeness for the sake of clicks.
I want to learn from it. It's not about a shock and awe type of video, but hopefully people learn a little bit more about why saturation diving is next level and ultra dangerous, and why these guys get paid whatever they get paid. It's a tough career. It's a tough job. I don't envy it. I don't want to be a saturation diver, but we definitely need those guys.
I'm
ladies.
sure, we don't know, but I'm sure this led to, as everything in progress, all kinds of new safety protocols. We're like, it's probably now, I don't know, impossible unless it's pressurized. There's probably some mechanism that doesn't allow a door to be open, or will pressure, or something like that is probably now in place.
Yeah. I agree. I actually can't believe you can open the door without the pressure. Like, I feel like,
or it was left. I think it was left open. One door was left open?
Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't know.
But my thing is, why did we have to have this accident to figure that out? Like, I wish that didn't happen. But anyways, pretty gruesome. A lot of people want to learn about this. When it comes to these extreme depths, changes on pressure is really, really dangerous. There was just an accident that happened very recent with, I think it was in Trinidad, where I think it was 4 divers got sucked into a pipe. It was one of those things where, like, a pipe is clogged, they're working to unclog it, and once they unclog it, they get sucked in. Many, many commercial divers have died this way. I know there's a name for it. I can't think of it right now, but I remember reading and learning about this years ago, before I even knew about the whole Trinidad thing. But a lot of people are asking us to react to that and talk about that. I don't know if we'll do that. I mean, just because Trinidad was one of the many accidents that where this happened, that differential pressure accident happened. But definitely fascinating stuff and dangerous stuff. Hopefully those of you who have requested for us to talk about this specific incident is infamous, I guess, in history. But here we are. We like to talk about diving, and we like to analyze these incidents. And not every one of them is happy, but we get to learn and talk about it.
Yep. Well said. I don't have anything to add. I'm a little bit... I'm just a little bit blown away, I guess is the right word. It was a tough one, but I actually learned a lot from it as well. So anyway, I think we could wrap this one up.
There are many dangers to commercial divers for sure. We have a video in the past of a diver that got stabbed by a swordfish. Remember that video?
Yeah.
He's a commercial diver minding his own business and gets some. This swordfish decides to stab this guy. And I'm going to leave you with that one right here.
Thanks, everybody.
Funny video. Change the mood. See you in the next one.